All right, all right. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight to hear some poetry. I, of course, want to thank all of my readers for, again, taking a chance on this very self-indulgent reading series. Because I couldn't resist making it about me and putting myself in the name. I guess just to let everyone in the audience know, again, we're recording this. Try to stay muted during the whole thing. You can use the chat all you want. I don't know, praise people, tell them you like the poem, whatever you want to do in the chat, go for it. I'll also be posting, I don't know, bios in the chat, I guess, as well as links to any books or chat books that the readers have for sale. All right. All right. So we have 5 readers. We have Ben Niespodziany, we have Jessica Poli, we have Sara Potocsny, VanderHart, and Evan Williams. And pretty much going to hear from everybody in that order. All right. All right. So first up, we have Ben Niespodziany, who works nights in a library in Chicago and might very well be in said library right now. His writing has appeared in the Wigleaf Top 50, Fence, Salt Hill, Fairy Tale Review, and various other amazing places. He has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Best of the Net, and Best Microfiction. He has 2 chapbooks on the way, finally. One of micropoems based on the 1992 Dutch film, The Northerners, which will be out through Above Ground Press this winter. And one of prose poems based on vintage circus films out in early 2022. And how do those both not sound fantastic? So it's all Ben's.
Thank you, David, for having this event. I've never heard anyone read my bio before, so that was very strange. But yeah, I appreciate everyone being here. And I am, in fact, at my library. So if there's ever a fire alarm or anything crazy that my student workers can't handle, I might have to step out, but we're good for now. So I'll be reading from 5 different manuscripts, kind of doing microfictions and fragments, prose poems, tiny snippets of fairy tales, the smallest of which will be 14 words long. So everything's very brief, very concise. I'll start with this first manuscript. The working title is Flimsy Chimney, and they're all kind of domestic you and I poems. I found pound cake in my mouth, perfectly baked, resting on my tongue. Whenever I removed a slice, another took its place. Dear, I said to you, sounding mumbly like I had pound cake in my mouth. The cakes were overtaking the kitchen. You exhaled from the other room. Can you come here, I asked. I started sweating. The cakes continued. Our neighbors knocked and noticed the cakes escaping my mouth. We'd worked so hard to not be odd. What is it, you finally said, still within the other room, grooming our newborn stork? This next one is called Sage and Citrus. The candles arrived on time, so we ordered more candles. This went on for years. A neighbor we admired stopped wearing her favorite sweater. We both noticed and wept. So these next 2 are super brief, and they're from Manuscript in Progress, all that deal with God poems and religion and faith, and the working title is Gosh. Fable number 4. 6 mystics dig a hole to hell and find God gardening in the dark. Fable 43. The god of lost gods asked me which god I was looking for, and when I said the name, the god explained to me the rules. And this next section is all deals with ekphrastic, either from found art or from films, or just other poetry or lines that I really like. So this first one is a cento, and I'll actually put the names in the chat. You can try to guess. So the idea of the cento is that every line that it contains is from someone else. So none of the lines are my own. I had dinner again. The host continued to draw something that looked like a duck. The years passed by in pressing weeds. On our way back, a boatman hollered. I had no choice but to sit down beside him. How disappointing that the garden was gone. I thought it was silver, so we looked inside. This next one from the same ekphrastic manuscript is inspired by the tarot deck, in particular, the Fool. On stage, the Fool sits with a puppet, a tiny puppet on his shoulder, holding an even tinier guillotine. Every so often, as the Fool sings and juggles and trips, the tiny puppet retrieves rats from his bag and feeds them to the blade. The blood spreads during the show, and never does the Fool acknowledge. His hat is a dance of bells. His lute has glued the cracks. The night is long. Men pay extra to stripe their necks. And these last few are from a manuscript in progress called Borscht, which is a novella of kind of fairy tale retellings. They all are kind of interconnected. So there's the woodsman, the witch, and then kind of the people in the town, but those are the two main characters. And everyone was kind of promoting on Twitter that they were going to do spooky poems, and I have a lot of witch poems. So these will be, the next few are all very witch heavy. Witch soothed her moving house, said no to the go, said trees killed when cooked. Still the house fled. Alive, she sent death a cursed hearse, a cat frozen whole, a dog of lost bones. Asked for wisdom from the dish, only to bowl and doze some more. Brought back jewels and a horse, ornaments to crime her plight. Witch's face was last seen behind a sled, led slowly by a row of pigs. Witch unzips 6 different parts of her 9 bags and finally finds her pill, which she chills in a jar and counts for its hatch. The batch will birth many, she says. The silent town waits in line with their empty mouths open. Like last time, Witch sings to speed the process. Like last time, it's true. Witch collects an assembly of teeth. Horse, wolf, man, beast. A different pair she wears every day. And when the day is done, she returns the teeth to their jars of ink and closes her eyes for the night. Her mouth like a child's, as soft as a cave. Witch lives in a cellar behind the stove and is known to mimic a mouse. She spins thin thread and summons the dead, then climbs back up to her cloud. The rain stops and her mud dries, and still Witch is not dead. Her windows she paints black, then moon, then black, then red. By morning, townsfolk notice. What secrets does the mud hut hold? They send her a dismembered horse, and she eats it whole. First the hooves, and later its ghost. And this final piece is from a collection of one-act plays called Cardboard Clouds. And it's the final piece of that manuscript. And it's another cento to finish it out with some words that are not my own. And I'll put those names in the chat as well. A cast of actors is awaiting the rise of an enormous curtain. Figures appear on stage. A little boat approaches. The music stops, the play is over. It is small and far away. You've been a wonderful audience. The curtain hangs in midair, then just the static. Thank you all for listening, and looking forward to hearing the rest of everyone's readings.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I kind of knew that, you would bring the October witch poems, and I'm excited to see that everyone else is maybe going to also bring a little bit of spookiness to the reading tonight. All right, so next up we have Jessica Poli, who is the author of 4 amazing chapbooks and the co-editor of the collection More in Time, a tribute to Ted Kooser, which came out this year from the University of Nebraska Press. She is a PhD student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, founder and editor of Bird Feast, and the assistant poetry editor of Prairie Schooner. And I will put links to 2 of her chapbooks in the chat that you should very much buy. And it is all addresses now.
Thank you, David. And thanks so much for organizing this. This is so nice. The first poem that I'm going to read is a poem that's not my usual kind of jam, but I realized that I've never read it at a reading before, and it's a fun poem to read, as I think you'll see. It's got a little spicy language in it, so if that's not your thing, cover your ears for, I don't know, a minute or something. This is called My Body Is Not. My body is not a vase, not an apple or pear, not rhubarb, strawberry, peach, nor double cherry, not fruit or wonderland, not wispy, willowy, pliable, soft, ripe porcelain, vanilla-scented girl next door, breathless, angelic, glowing, delicate, fragile flower, not tore up or sexy from the floor up, not in contention, not a vacuum of desire, not proof there is a God, not a terrible boat, not a peculiar river, not a love tunnel, not frail, wayfish, milky, ageless, vulnerable, not a voluptuous, wet dream, buxom, bootylicious bombshell, not a woofer, not a skirt or shirt or sweater, not a bicycle, not a machine, not a sea donkey, sausage jockey, sex kitten, not hourglass or Coke bottle, not a cow or whale or hog, not bird, fox, hen, or fawn, not a heifer, not woolly mammoth, pink panther, wet seal, not a trap, not bag, box, hole, not honeypot, banana basket, not hoo-ha, foo-foo, cha-cha, woohoo, what's her tits, not 2 o'clock beauty queen, not pie, cookie, muffin, cupcake, waffle, dumpling, pound cake, not a temple, not a garden to be tended, not a landscape, not peaks, rivers, crops, fertile soil, not a pink moon or a golden valley, not unexplored wilderness, not a wasp, not a butterfly. My body does not flutter, not a jewel or gem, not glass, not a prison or cage, not a castle to be conquered, not home plate, not the dugout or the field of dreams, not tail, tart, toots, trick, troll, not a piece or a slip or a bit of fluff, not a doormat, not a footstool, not a punching bag or ball and chain, not a vessel, do not try and fill me, not a fling, not a floozy, not a sweet thing, not a cum dumpster, fuckhole, whisker biscuit, dick eating cunt, not Dulcinea, not Daisy, not a light or a flame, not Venus, Cleopatra, Medusa, not a mouse, not a candlestick, not minx, not nymph, not doll, not dish, not gash, not grouse, not hag, not rib, not rug, not cup, not canyon, not cave, not Red Sea, not a bed for you to lay down in, not a pillow, not velvet, silk, satin, not feed bag, not milk jug, not an oven baking cakes, not summer storm, not winter, not spring, and definitely not fall. The research process to that poem took me on some wild rides down Reddit forums. A lot of horrifying stuff on the internet. The rest of the poems I'm going to read, I think all of them, I decided to read poems that I'm having trouble with, which I've never done in a reading before, but I have this handful of poems that I'm just like, I've been having trouble with them, and there are things I like about them, and there are things that I don't like about them. And the reason I wanted to do that is because of this first poem, which I've had a few people read, and they've kind of told me like it's not working, but I really like it. And so I wanted to read it. So I'm going to read that, and then a few others that are kind of like my problem children at the moment. Because why not? Okay. This is called How to Let Go Completely. I take part of what he left in me and feed it to the goats. They cough up silence. I cough up a handle of rot gut whiskey and place it on the table, a centerpiece. This is how it happened, I say to no one. Then the goats run in, kicking over the television, the bookcase, the lamps. They knock all the dirty dishes to the floor. Underneath it all, he doesn't love me. I get out a ledger and start listing reasons why that matters. Number one, because it didn't occur to me that he didn't. I loved the soft, drunk smell of him. I wanted to take him into a field and plant him among sunflowers and red onions where the deer would come and graze. One night, my nose fell into his armpit and I thought of cabbages blooming. Since then, I've slept with other men, but none of them could reach far enough inside of me to remove his shadow. Now the animals stand by, growing restless. Their hooves scrape a rhythm on the floor. Poem in conflict with despair. Loss drops its anchor in a forest full of song. I want to remain faithful to the river and to sorrow, which is stuffed in the mouth of the bird carrying straw to build its nest on a branch heavy with red berries, a girl standing under it, wallowing. The process of transformation doesn't end. Even a tree felled by lightning has its afterlife. Even memory finds its way to change, become honey poured over ox blood, fire, the clump of horse hair left soaking in the water bucket long after the horse has died. None of this means give up, even if you're lonely, even if the dishes in the sink have been sitting for weeks and the fruit flies are feasting. There will always be a new lamb in the barn, although its twin might not make it. It's okay that the heart runs short on hope now and then. Somewhere else in the body, there's a flicker through the trees. This is called The Sleeping Beauty. It's actually called whatever The Sleeping Beauty is in French, but I can't pronounce French, so it's called The Sleeping Beauty. It's after a Magritte painting. Some mornings I'm the horse in Magritte's painting, waking and peering out the window, wondering how to get down to the rose bushes below. Horses have difficulty going downstairs. Did you know that? It's because they can't see their feet. One unremarkable day when I was 27, I snapped my Achilles tendon playing kickball and had trouble with stairs for months. I remember trying to stand right after it happened, feeling like my foot had been disconnected from my leg. And then the surgery and the bottles of Percocet, which I chased with Benadryl to deepen the high. To no one's surprise, I grew depressed, and as soon as I could walk without crutches, I entered liquor store after liquor store, trying to find something to fill the hole inside of me. I don't know what my surgeon used to stitch my tendon back together. When I press my fingers over the long scar, it feels thicker than before. And when I stretch, there's always a moment when I'm afraid it will break again. Rupture is the word the doctors used, which I remember thinking applied to a lot of things in my life at that time, but I might have been being dramatic. But yes, there were mornings when to venture outside among the flowers felt impossible, the sun too bright, the people on the street too happy, the world too pink and rosy. I'd rather draw the curtains with my fine hooves, retreat to the dark swirl of my bed, eat apples and grain until the sun went down again. I just have two more poems. The next one is called Cathedral. Before the lights went out, before a tree grew from my mouth, the sheep were on the hill and it was midnight in the burned barn. The drunk woman was calling again for her cat who died 3 years ago. I was drinking gin. The bath was full of histories. What's left for us but belief? How injured do I have to be to draw a red X through you? The room swirls. The bat finally makes its way through the crack near the air conditioner. Sometimes I am so alone, I become snow. In dreams, you kiss me, and your tongue lays an egg on my tongue. You are a beautiful forest of mistakes. I will walk inside of you until my legs give out, my mouth a cathedral of learning. For anyone who's been to Pittsburgh, there actually is a building called the Cathedral of Learning, and I've been, ever since going to school there, I've been like trying to figure out how to steal that name. It would make a really good book title, but I haven't made that happen yet. Okay, so the last poem is called Palinode, and it's a poem that actually responds to a poem that I didn't read tonight. Smart, Jess. But the first two lines are kind of reversing an ending from another poem, which ended with killing a lamb, because it's not a poetry reading that I'm in without a lamb dying. So it ends with a lamb being killed, and it says something like, it says something about the blood being beautiful. So this is Palinode. The blood from the lamb wasn't beautiful. I know this even having not seen it. She died in the night, the same way it came to me that the man I loved would disappear like a deer flashing past headlights and into a cornfield. Later, as I buried her beside her sisters on the woody ridge of the sewage pond, I recited the names of the ones who left shadows in me, their animal breath, a ghost in every field I work, where my body still searches for what it cannot hold. Thank you so much. And thank you, David, for organizing this. It's so wonderful. And thanks for everyone else who's reading.
All right, thanks, Jess. I was getting really excited thinking that first poem just wasn't going to have an ending. That it would just kind of be infinite and keep being this amazing list. So we're going to go from a former Syracusean, I don't know, something, to a current Syracusite, whatever we're going to go with. Next up, we have Sara Potocsny, who graduated this past spring with her MFA from Syracuse University, where she's now teaching. In her spare time, she paints, plays the viola, and/or hangs out with her kid. She's working on getting her first manuscript into the world, but in the meantime has work in the LA Review, Maudlin House, Had, Hobart, No Contact, and others.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, Jess and Ben. Yeah, it's so lovely. I'm just gonna get right to it. There was a tweet that went out about giving Wegmans tonight, so I'm just gonna kick it off with my Wegmans poem. Well, you'll find out. I was gonna give you a whole what is Wegmans, but I'm gonna not do that. Okay, this is called At Wegmans, which is your Kroger, which is my friend. Went to Wegmans to wonder a little. I wondered by the bulk candies first. Along the aisles of blue gummy sharks, peach rings, and nonpareils, I wondered what it might be like to live in a world where people needed each other more. What if driving required two people? What if shoelaces could only be tied by third graders? Things would be different. I wondered in the bakery after that, by the macaroons and birthday cakes, I wondered why certain people talk very little while other people don't stop. I wondered where on the spectrum I fell while watching a man in a funny hat throwing dough at the countertops. He was making such an important mess. His hat looked like the dough too, and I wondered what it must be like to love something so much you wanted to wear it on top of your head. But I only wondered that for a second before the lobsters caught my eye. Free the lobsters, I thought, watching them topple over one another, brandishing their claws against the glass. I wondered how many people in the world weren't sure if anyone loved them. I began to look around at all the people and wondered what on a person might give such a thing away. My 4-year-old was with me. He'd been with me the whole time, wondering things too, I'm sure. Everyone was. He pointed to the lobsters and said, "They look like they're ready to die," about which I wondered how he'd come up with such a thing, but not so much as knew. I told him once that looking at the lobsters made me sad. The lobsters in the tank were soon to be cooked and eaten. He was more fascinated than scared. And that made me wonder too, about what the world would be like if we never developed a fear for dying, and whether, without that fear, we would wonder about it all the same. Okay, I'm going to switch modes. Very much so. With my 4-year-old at the pediatrician after a strep test, thinking about all the other times. It's a very different poem. Here we go. We used to have this one I swear enjoyed inflicting pain on him. This one will really make him scream. He would wink. Grabbing one of 3 vaccines, he'd then plug into my kid's arm, the little boy reeling, smacking around, so helpless and red-faced, even his dad slumped away, feigning interest in the I Spy poster on a far wall instead. That was when his dad would still come to these things. The last time he came with us, weeks before it got out, he'd been using again. Soul had to be tested for lead. In Syracuse, it's not a question of if, but of how much. It was January, the blood draw room cold and blue. The doctor looked at Igor and said, "You sit there with the kid in your lap, hold him down." And Igor slouched in the phlebotomist's chair, Soul between his legs, who buckled and kicked as the white coat attempted 3, 4, 5 times to find the vein, to poke a hole in his arm convincing enough to give generously, to draw forth the contents which would read what exactly he was up against and how toxic the home. But nothing came through, the vein so tense no blood would willingly leave. And what stuck with me is Igor's own eyes shut tight, his chin lifted toward the ceiling, like whatever he was really afraid of seeing wasn't right there in front of him, wasn't thrashing through his arms, begging, screaming for him to just stop. Sorry, it's very dark. I'm gonna do this back and forth between poems that are really difficult and poems that are whimsy. So our next one's called Teen Squirrels. It's recently published in HAD. Here we go. Teenage squirrels everywhere are falling in love. Sorry, I can't do this without laughing. I can. Teen squirrels of a certain age are driving out to Manlius to hotbox their parked cars and get their backs blown out by other teen squirrels who have fallen irrevocably in love with them. It gets worse. Teen squirrels have always fallen in love, of course, but this year is different. Some are saying that as many as 93% of teenage squirrels in the greater Syracuse area alone are actively in love. And that is not counting teens of families living in more secluded areas. Teen squirrels are unlike teens of other species in that they're always chomping at the bit, so to speak, have virtually no moral compass and actually like being outside. This is a threat. For years, we have fallen under the spell of the squirrel. We have grown so accustomed to their ways, studies show the average person today would prefer their neighbors be of squirrel descent than of human, ave, and religious combined. I have a teen squirrel living beneath my front porch. Parents don't know what to do with him. At night, I catch him sneaking out past curfew to hightail it across the busy street and join a few other teen squirrels from the neighborhood in what I can only imagine is a malevolent and lusty romp to incite distress and feelings of romantic inadequacy in the lives of more typically loving folk everywhere. We must not allow the teen squirrel to become the supreme lover among men. We must put an end to such reckless, amorous abandon running rampant across our lawns, atop our telephone wires, and at times in our very own attics. We must ask ourselves the difficult questions. Are our children safe? Have you noticed any strange behavior lately? Are they jumping, running, and chasing things erratically? Have they decided, to your disbelief, to put down their devices and ask for some time in the yard instead? Know the warning signs. No one is safe. This teen squirrel love knows no bounds. Thank you. Next. Okay. All right, this one is one that I wrote a very long time ago, and I'm not sure how it's gonna go over. I'm kind of nervous about reading it. I'm just gonna go for it. It's the only one that has any kind of like Halloween vibes too, and it's very little in there. It's very minimal, but I'm gonna try it. Okay, it's called King. No one really wants a king anyway. Terrence Hayes. Okay. I want a king. I'm just kidding. I mean, I kind of want a king. It's 9 a.m. at 560 Allen Street. I've had to duck for privacy 11 times since waking up at 7. I've had one 46 and one 50-year-old man peep my naked ass running after my child, and then curse the first one out for reaching for a hug as I stepped out onto the stoop into the rain. A king is a drawing in charcoal. From the yard, I can see straight into my mini fridge. I love this place, but maybe if I had a king, he could at least help me buy blinds or a peace of mind that doesn't prod me awake at 3 a.m. each night expecting fire trucks and friends with mouths the shape of tombstones. Maybe a king might be the one to fuck me right up into no longer being shared space, unfortified land, a boundary in parley. The truth is, things would probably get easier so long as he doesn't shoot dope, read anime, watch anime, yell at me, yell at Soul, yell at the dog, bop, techno, dubs up house 18 hours a day, ask for me to cook for him, ask for me to prioritize his art over mine, sell drugs, use his friends for money for drugs, use me and my art for money for drugs, talk about drugs like they're the only reason he is as good of an artist as he is, want me to be his mom, want to fuck his mom, want to fuck my best friend, want to fuck my best friend and I at the same time and impregnate us both, want me to really consider that, and once I do play dead, want me to pretend cunt means I care, want to strip, want to not be a cut, want to affect other men with HIV, want to destroy weakness, want to destroy himself, want to eradicate feeling from the earth, want to love me in a way that is unexpected of and by me and in no other way at all. But more than that, I want to be able to say I want a king and not have you all assume I mean to save us. I do want a king. I want someone like me, someone who can tell the difference between room and space without needing to know what might fill it. Someone who, despite the smell of the carpets in here, the writing on the walls, the hair in the eyes, sees that maybe our being a part of this place is not so much curtain as it is fabric, crutch as it is credence in what's possible without some sovereign hell bent on ruling us according to a map. Hell itself is a barely visible dot on. In a place like this, we could do with the king about as much as we could do without one. The neighbors are putting up the same Halloween decor they have for years. Every October, the trees around 560 stop growing for a month, and the house seems slightly to swell, everything in it gaining on them. Okay, I have one more. Thank you for bearing with me through that. It was tough. Okay, this one's a short one, I promise. Half of me. I have news. Everything quiet now will eventually revolt. I keep leaving the hill seconds before the sunset. I walk with my back to people in pods, circles of friends pressed tenuously into short grass as blankets as big as parachutes. The top halves of bodies hanging out the sun roofs of parked cars silhouetted by pulping sky. My ex used to say, "Where's the rest of the person?" at the sight of a slack pair of pants in a shared dryer or a random sneaker wedged into a storm drain. Anything that implied it had once been worn and loved before its time. But me, I try not to need much. What makes me happy? Innocence does. Two innocuous boys do, on a throw in the grass, their fingers touching for the first time over the fabric bunching between them. The moon is moving away from us a few centimeters a year, yet I remain calm as I descend into the city proper, not avoiding this. The sky draining of all light somewhere I can't see, hear, or be a part of unless I'm made to. Okay, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I feel very humbled to be reading amongst such wonderful people. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah, for really bringing Syracuse tonight. Makes me happy, makes me nostalgic. I keep lamenting my lost Wegmans. So next up, we have VanderHart. Han is a non-binary queer Southern writer living in Durham, North Carolina. They have poetry and essays published in the Boston Globe, Kenyon Review, the American Poetry Review, the Rumpus, Agni, and elsewhere. Han is the host of Poetry, the podcast, edits Moist Poetry Journal, and reviews at Ego Theory Review, and is the author of the poetry collection What Pecan Light, which came out this year from Bull City Press. And take it away, Han.
Thanks so much, David. And thank you, Ben and Sarah and Jessica and Evan. Oh my goodness, Evan, I am always last. So I'm really excited you're here tonight. I'm very excited for your poems. And I'm also just like, yeah, it's very cool. I was like, well, I'll go last. And then I was like, wait, W. So yeah, thank you. I'm going to read just two poems from What Pecan Light that were when I digitally searched my book, I got some evil spirits and some ghosts. And then I'm going to do some ghost poems and zombie nurse poem and stuff. Okay. This is History as a Bottle Tree. Returns us to the enslaved in the South, placing a bottle on each broken myrtle branch. At night, a spirit would catch in the bottle like a fruit fly in a vinegar jar, not able to wend its way out the slender mouth. And this is how evil would be captured in the South, visibly in cobalt blue or clear glass. Now empty whiskey bottles, pop bottles grow from the arms of trees, wave in the air. In their hollows, we keep our evil spirits. And this is this poem's called In a Dream. I'm at a poetry reading and I look out the window and it's like a paragraph. And it has a bunch of slashes, so it takes a little breath to get through. Okay. In a dream, I'm at a poetry reading and I look out the window. It is dusk and several men are digging in a graveyard. Small paper American flags, the kind teachers keep on their desks in a cup, are flying everywhere. The flags litter the grass, fill the wind. A boy runs through the graveyard, his shirt a single Confederate flag. Now tell me, what came first, poetry or the abundance of the image? And what is the reader to do with abundance in poetry? Too much is a gloss of abundance, and I have been called that. But when there is too much of one thing, don't we give that thing away or burn it in a barrel as my family did, striking a match, lighting a paper corner, setting the mess ablaze? British poets will tell you how long fire and desire have rhymed. They will tell you they did it first, translated the Italian, the English always arms and legs ahead of us, teaching us of flags and property. But we made abundance and too much our creed in America, and it comes for us in our dreams, narrows to a flag on a child's body. Let us light this flag up to give us a burning to see by, to make space for others, to keep our graveyards unfilled with children and their parents, to make the white ghost of the South lonely, deny them our continued company, our dreamscapes, our poetry. I always run out of breath right at the end. We made too much our creed in America. And that's when I'm like, it's about perfect, unfortunately. And this is a very southern summer North Carolina poem. On this July night, all you can think about is the past. The moisture presses the panes, ghost itself on our doors and windows, yawns and breathes against the glass. This July night, the rain having come and gone, watered the garden, filled the children's pool until the pool's lit brims. Why are ghosts white? I want to know. No, I probably don't. Why do we feel ghosts in empty rooms, a silent and pressing company? What is full and what is empty? Half a glass, half a person. All you need for glass is sand and fire and smelting. All you need for a ghost is a single memory. Can you dredge one up tonight? One ghost. It is a little boy in black farm boots. He shimmied off in midair, so your father called him Twinkle Toes. Gone and more gone, and yet here, eyes wide against the panes, like the fallen rain, the clouds, the humidity, so much breath on the glass. I need to set a timer. I'm going to skip that one, and I'm going to go to my zombie nurse poem. This poem I was inspired to write while getting this tattoo and staring at all the tattoo flash on the wall. And so a lot of this is by one of my favorite artists in town. Ekphrasis with flash tattoos. There's a needle humming in my arm as I stare into the eyes of a beautiful nurse blossoming out of a giant rose. A massive chain links a perimeter around her and the rose. Her top and bottom lips pout in versions of each other. A stiff collar, side buttoned, holds her whole neck. A red cross rises like a sun above her. The only hint of sickness is the red shadow under each eye. Death rides in, cresting a Hokusai wave, skeleton elbow and arm grasping a crescent moon. It is a moon. No, it is Death's scythe. It is Death's scythe. No, it is the moon, back and forth like a wave. A Hawaiian girl, yellow rose in her dark hair, pear-shaped breast, the pink Orioles lift from as if they were tiny alien saucers. So low, I think, but all breasts are different. Creeping up the wall, a panther with seraph wings, beating up and down its body, wings sprouting from his tail. What you feel in your back, is it a bruise, or is it where your wing was? Dragons and rainbows, women with impossibly torqued hips, wasp waist, ships sailing out of the eye, brickwork breaking through the flesh. Everything is possible in a line, and another word for the needle is pen. And here's my last one. And this is after an 1872 painting by Arnold Böcklin. And it's titled after the painting, which is Self-Portrait with Death Playing the Fiddle. The artist not looking, but listening. What are you listening to? Asked his friends. So Böcklin made Death visible in reply, crouched over his shoulder, grinning. A single string on Death's fiddle, tuned to G. Death's bony grip, nearly brushing the painter's face, his fine beard. The painter holds a cloth under his thumb to wipe his brush as Death wipes us all away. Notice the grammar of Death. Like God, it is best to avoid pronouns. Simply name what you are trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Han. I absolutely love ekphrastic poems. So happy you shared this. Last up, we have Evan Williams. Evan studies at the University of Chicago, where he writes about surrealism, environmental literature, and masculinity. His work can be found in Diagram, Pithead Chapel, Had, Elsewhere, and more. He can be found yelling about sports and wild animals on social media at what I'm assuming is pronounced Evan Squilliams. At first I thought it was like, a middle initial Evan S. Williams, but no, I realized that was Evan Squilliams. All right, it is all yours.
Cool. This has been amazing. Kind of daunted to go last now, but I am going to lean full on into spooky. I'm gonna read the last section of a manuscript I'm working on right now called Claustrophobia Surprise. So each section begins with this poem that kind of like recycles elements of all the poems to come into, it's like a very narcissistic version of a cento, I guess, because it's all using my lines. So that's what's first. This one's called Death Break. The end of the rainbow holds a circle of men crying and hugging. I hum what I think an opera would sound like. Little rich people say things little rich people would say, like, "You should be dead." I bark at them. It's clear that they are all very afraid. Ultimately, it boils down to a scythe persuading its way through the body. The apocalypse gathers. Every time you blink, someone new has joined. This one's called The Tall Man. The tall man is a gardener without thumbs. Every morning, he walks into his garden and says hello to the soil. He rakes at it with 4 straightened fingers until a small hole forms, into which he plants a glove with the thumb cut off. Then he sweeps soil over the hole and drips a little water on top. Every night before bed, the tall man goes into his garden to say goodnight to the soil and wish it luck. He really is a very good gardener, that tall man, always dreaming of something sprouting. A garden of thumbless selves, maybe. Someone should love the tall man. How much love he has imagined. This one's called Something Quite Big. You smell like coyotes, says the son to his father. Like one coyote or the whole pack, queries the father. Well, it depends on the size of the pack. No more than 14, but certainly no fewer than 4, says the son. Have they killed anything of late? Asks the father. Why, yes, they have just now killed something, the son answers. The father sniffs himself. It was big, wasn't it? He asks. Oh, yes, they have just now killed something quite big, says the son. But it's just now been killed, asks the father. Yes, just moments ago. The big thing was alive and with his family less than an hour before our conversation, decides the son. Well, that's not so bad then, since it's not had time to decay. I feel better, says the father, turning into a number of coyotes and bursting out the screen door. The son stands at the door, counting. This one's called The Nightmare. The nightmare speaks in barn riddles and bales yarns from twilight to twilight. I fill her trough as she needs. We go on like this for some time. We even have a little birthday party for her, pitch black and without candles. One night, she tells me that she is dying. She has, she says, one wish, to go for a ride in the darkened corn. Of course, I tell her, and bow so she might saddle my bean-spined back. I trot, and she whistles a tune that sounds like a scythe might feel persuading its way through the body. The apocalypse gathers at my heels. I am sure of nothing and filled with stars. This one's called Proprietary Matters. My lungs have become hot air balloons rising. I can hear little rich people tittering about the wine and alveolus. I imagine them gout suffering and French bread crumb mustachioed, sitting in their baskets rising through the mucus cloud of my chest cavity. The balloon tops tap at my sternum. I can hear one of them make a phone call to an aeronaut. We'd like you to deossify the sky, he says into his phone. On a smaller hot air balloon, a pickaxed man rises and fractures my internities. From here, I decide to guide them with my voice. I love them like children. I want them out of me. You'll have to divert the balloon's flame to melt away the skin, I say. The one with the phone says, we ought to divert the balloon's flame to melt away the skin. The others pat him on the back. They wait while the sky melts open for them, saying things that little rich people would say, like, my, or oh dear, and I would like a pig delivered with an apple. I hum what I think an opera would sound like, and it seems to sate their need for expensive noise. At last, they burst out and shout a haughty, hurrah! They look down at the alveolus region, whose winemaking slows by the second. Mountains of dermis all frayed and blackened. They have been discovered. Goodbye, I sputter as my lungs fly away. One of them throws down a hunk of bread as a thank you. They bicker over proprietary matters. This one's called The Pope's Heart. The papal corsairs shuffle me into a chest. I spend all my breath shouting, you're dead, you should be dead. It doesn't change the fact of my lugged directionality. The papal corsairs offer in return, for they like a good conversation as well, a long-winded explanation of spatio-temporal logistics that involve a seafaring form of quantum physics, something about the waves aligning just so. Ultimately, it boils down to, this is God's world, we're just living in it. It is clear that they are all very afraid. I hear from inside the chest a slight sploosh sound, and by a miracle of quantum physics or the sea, a second sploosh sound, and then the knocking of dry boots on mosaic floor. A rosary is said, and I'm dropped as the papal corsairs condense into rosary beads on the floor around the chest. Someone in red opens my chest, and someone in red collects the papal corsair rosary, and I am handed to someone else in red who shoves me into a chest veiled in white. God's world. I beat on the walls until the last of my strength is gone. This is called The Dragon at the Bottom. The tall man runs down a flight of stairs in a fit of valiance. There's a dragon at the bottom. A dragon is nothing. The tall man is St. George. He does not fear fire. The tall man has eaten jalapenos for years. The steps are coated in salt. The tall man slips in his valiance. He is red and embarrassed. The dragon at the bottom is sipping a margarita, eating nachos. The beast curtsies and asks for a salsa. The tall man has never danced a salsa with a dragon before. He accepts. removes his chainmail armor, freeing his shaven baby body. The dragon takes his hand, satisfied with the tall man's forthrightness. This is called Rainbow Cry. A man plopped down in the end of a rainbow and began to cry. A council of leprechauns gathered to decide what this meant. One approached the man and gently hugged him. Inside the end of the rainbow, the leprechaun too began to cry. The others on the council joined one by one until the end of the rainbow held a circle of men crying and hugging. Every time you blink, someone new is joined. Couple more. This one's called I Shave Everywhere 3 times a day except my upper lip. I shave everywhere 3 times a day except my upper lip because I want to look like a sea lion. I want to look like a sea lion because everyone loves sea lions, and if I could pretend to be one, I would have an excuse to balance a ball on the tip of my nose. I want to balance a ball on the tip of my nose because that is a skill very few creatures have, and skills that very few creatures have are lucrative if marketed well. I go to a market after shaving to learn how to market well. All I find are fish. I eat some with the bones and all. The fishmongers clap for me and are amazed that I do not choke. I think that maybe all my shaving is turning me into a sea lion at last. I stay at the market all day to practice not choking. The next day I return, and the next too. Soon I grow fat like a sea lion. I go to the park and watch the dogs to learn how to bark. I think that a dog's bark and a sea lion's bark are so similar that one must have copied the other. I practice my barking at the park with the dogs, and they look at me funny. I shave one to see if a sea lion is underneath. It is not. I go to the ocean where I submerge myself at intervals. I practice my fish swallowing. A couple appears and takes photos of me, practicing my fish swallowing on a medium-sized fish. I practice shaving with sharp rocks, and I talk to the other sea lions. None of them balance balls on their noses. They look at me funny when I say words like lucrative or marketing. So I bark at them instead. When I bark, they don't look at me funny. This makes me happy, so I decide to forget English altogether. Bark. This one is called The Lives of a Tall Man in a Special Coat. 1. In my special coat, I am a tall man. I am a special man in my tall coat. I am a man in my tall, special coat. 2. When I marry, I will paint my tall coat a special white. I will attach a veil to its collar. I am a man who enjoys beautiful face drapery. I will be taller than the priest who will be specially picked. 3. Each morning of my marriage, I will tell a tall tale to my special person. Listen, I will say, of all the special men I have dreamed to be. 4. In my tall coat on the high seas, I am the Gordon's fisherman. If I'm feeling shaven, I might be a maestro with my special coat. I want to be Billy Joel. Without my coat, though, I'm just a regular man who never learned to play the piano. I started the fire and hid inside my special coat. The fire became tall and I wanted to become a fire. In my tall coat, I ate a special pepper and breathed fire. What sorts of men become dragons and who are their tailors? St. George gave me water in a tall glass to drink. 5. Lying in bed in a medicine coat, I am treated like a special man. My love brings me tall bowls of special broth and irons my coat. The gravedigger leaves sacks of dirt on my doorstep in his special coat. I would want to be a gravedigger if I could carry a scythe. The reaper would not be so grim were his coat a touch more special. 6. I had a portrait commissioned of my special coat. It was held by a mannequin, a tall one with shoulders like me. I stood in the corner, especially naked. 7. In my naked coat, I am a corner man. I am a naked man in my corner coat. I am a corner in my naked coat. I have one more, and I'm sorry for taking so long. I appreciate you all for bearing with me. This one is the spookiest, I think, and I felt like I had to read it, and I'm excited, and there's a little voice, and it's fine. So we're gonna do that. This is Ted. Ted wants your birds. They are for his children. Ted's children are worms. They did not start this way. Ted's children drink birds' blood. This is how they became worms. Ted's family lives in a pile of breadcrumbs. He imagines he manages an imaginary menagerie. Ted has never imagined doing anything else. His father manages a more successfully imagined menagerie. Ted's worms think Ted is a failure. "You are a failure," they say in unison. Ted's worms paint their breadcrumb pile with bird's blood. The breadcrumbs sing a bird song and the worms sing along. Ted does not know the words to the bird song. The worms know the words and everything else that Ted does not. Ted does not know he is imaginary. The worms have created him out of branches. Ted is a portal for bird's blood. He cannot exist without your birds. Ted needs your birds. Thank you so much for putting this together, David. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Evan. I absolutely love Ted and believe in Ted now. All right, that unfortunately brings us to the end. Thank you again to Evan and Sarah and Jess and Han and Ben for reading tonight. I absolutely had a blast. I love that. Thank you for everyone, or to everyone for showing up. I hope to do this again, maybe in 3 weeks. So like November 12th-ish. I mean, I'll of course promote it thoroughly on Twitter. I don't know, turn off your mics if you want to clap loudly into your microphone, or use the little Zoom clap thing, or chat, whatever you want to do to show appreciation for our readers tonight. Don't forget to, if they have books available, grab their books. I threw all the links in the chat. Definitely grab their books. Look out for Ben's forthcoming chat books. And hopefully I will see everyone again in 3 weeks. Thank you all so very